Right. This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome everybody here to the regular meeting of council for Monday, October 3rd. The council recently came to the decision that we're going to start our regular meetings of council with a land acknowledgement, and this matter was brought forth both from our two local First Nations here, the Tsleil-Waututh and Squamish, but also certainly led and championed by Councillor Hanson. So I've asked Councillor Hanson if he'd be willing to read the land acknowledgement at the beginning of the meeting. Councillor Hanson.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters.
Let's get that on microphone.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hanson. I do have another statement to make at the beginning of the meeting before we get into the regular agenda. It's with a heavy heart that I report that we have to take a moment to acknowledge this weekend a worker lost their life while felling trees for the district in one of our parks in Princess Park this last weekend. This worker was performing important essential service for our community. I have reached out to the company's owners to offer sympathies and support on behalf of the council and staff here at the district. Everyone deserves to return home safely at the end of the workday, and tragically for this person, that wasn't the case. You know, we're a tight-knit community and tragedies affect us all deeply. So please keep the family and co-workers in your thoughts at this terrible time. Thank you very much. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the motion? Councillor Bond, thank you very much. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. I will just say that this meeting is being conducted in a hybrid fashion. All members of the public, council, and staff can participate in this meeting both in person or virtually. And so just to note that we do actually have the full council present as Councillor Murray is joining us through virtual means here this evening. The agenda that has been circulated has two sets of meetings that have been circulated along with it. Sorry, two sets of meeting minutes. This is from the June 20th special meeting of council and from the September 20th public meeting, the child care business license application. May I have a motion?
I'll moved.
Okay, moved by Councillor Murray, seconded by Councillor Back. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried and those minutes are adopted. Council, at this time, we have an opportunity for input from the public. We reserve a period of time of up to 30 minutes at the front end of every regular meeting of council for members of our community to come and raise issues of import to them and share them with their council. We have a speakers list that's been formed of people who have notified the clerk ahead of time. And so I do have a list of 5 speakers who have signed up ahead of time. If we still have additional time within the 30 minutes at that point, then I'll make sure to check back with everybody who's joined the meeting to see if anybody else would like to add their comments. At this point, I'm going to acknowledge Peter Teven here as our first speaker tonight, followed by Corey Cost, and Mr. Teven is here in the room. Welcome, Mr. Teven. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship. And for the minutes and record, Peter Teven, 1900 block, Indian River Crescent. If I could have the overhead on, please, and maybe freeze the time until that's on.
Sure. We have a new camera overhead, so we have to get a new box drawn on the table, I'm afraid.
And
fit the new.
Oh, there, the contrast is a little better. Bit of a delay in it too. You're welcome to zoom in if members of the audience want to read what's here, but what I wish to talk to you about tonight is some aspects of agenda item 8.2, which is the adoption of the bylaw granting permissive tax exemptions to the Lynn Valley Legion. I have here, and I'll leave this in the black tray so it can be copied to council for your perusal, copies of the section in the community charter that enables municipal councils to provide permissive tax exemptions to charitable organizations and community groups. I have a copy with some citations highlighted from the DNB's own corporate policy manual on permissive tax exemptions. And I have here a section of the guide from the Canada Revenue Agency that specifically says a charity may not take place, obviously, in an illegal activity or a partisan political activity, which is defined as either direct or indirect support of any political party or candidate for public office. Now, yesterday in Lynn Valley, organized by several candidates and including an apparent slate of candidates, a political promotion event was hosted at the Lynn Valley Legion. I worry on behalf of the Legion and its good members that this has sullied the reputation of the Legion by holding a political event there during a campaign. Not only is it a political event during a campaign, but it is also the site where we had an active development proposal. You can turn the overhead camera off now, thank you. An active development proposal, and we expect to see a return of that development proposal. Now, I have it on good advice that a fee was charged for this. I also have heard that there might have been free food given away, which would seem like an enticement to people. I worry about the judgment of holding a political event at such a prominent site in Lynn Valley. And I think it would be incumbent, in order to clear the air on this, for any sitting member of council who attended or assisted in organizing that event should recuse themselves from voting on this matter. I do not expect this matter to fail. I don't think that the Legion did anything wrong, but I think for propriety, that is probably the proper thing to do. We can leave sorting out who paid for what to Elections BC after the campaign period. But I consider it exceedingly poor judgment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Teven. Next speaker I have is Corey Cost. I believe Mr. Cost is joining us virtually. Can we just confirm Mr. Cost's attendance virtually? There we go.
I'm hoping you can see me, Your Worship.
Yes, welcome, Dr. Cost. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I'll just put up the share screen and allow you to see. I think this one here may be the, no, I think this is the better one. Share that one. Hope you can see the screen. So, good evening, Your Worship, members of council. My name is Corey Cost. I've been away on holidays during the time when the first, second, and third readings took place of this bylaw 8596, which is the DCC amending bylaw. So I had no choice, actually, and I really don't prefer to have these input at the very last minute. That is fourth reading. It should have been put to you during the one evening where you gave all 3 readings. Now, as stated in the staff report on page 383 of that meeting that I missed, I do look forward to a full review of the development contributions, both DCCs and CACs later this year or earlier next year. The inflation adjustment of 18.7% since 2018. That seems quite reasonable, considering that's about the change in the cost of living during that time. However, I am still of the opinion that the parks component of the DCC charges will remain woefully inadequate, and the amounts really to a subsidy of several $100 million to the development industry for developments proposed by 2030. Overall, this amounts to a cannibalization, as I've said before, of our surplus park space in order to meet the park's quota requirements. and is the primary reason why many come over our bridges to our parks on the weekend, because we have a surplus. They don't. I should be noted that we are not alone on this issue. Other municipalities noted that this for a decade or more ago, as land values significantly escalated. Reading their reports on this issue, I say they have decided to no longer list the components of their DCCs, but rather only a summary. So it's to hide, really, or maybe not deliberately, but it certainly is hidden now, the fees designated for each category of housing. That's all they do, but not the components of that, just a summary amount that you're going to get dinged with when you develop something. Sooner or later, though, it's my opinion that the penny will drop and the existing residents will need to pick up the tab. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you to Dr. Cost for your comments. The next speakers I have are Bruno Vahidi, followed by Sean Salas-Lyon. Bruno Vahidi is joining us here in the council chamber. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good evening, Worship, Council, and City staff members. I'm here with two of my neighbors here.
Just going to pause for a sec. Are you intending to have the overhead camera on?
Yes, please.
Let's get that going for you here.
This was submitted as well electronically to the council as well. So I'm here with two of my neighbors here, Mr. Amarjit and Julian, and also I have letters from other neighbors who are also supporting what I would say here. So it is about community building grant program that we, as a neighborhood, we came together during pandemic and we said, oh, what can we do instead of grouping each other with each other and sharing food and drinks, do something which is more pandemic friendly. So we came up with the idea of maybe taking an initiative of which would be good for the neighborhood, but also for the environment and be also educational for our children in the neighborhood. So we came up with the idea of having a hive, a neighborhood hive, beehives. So our neighborhood is located here between Mahon, St. James, and Windsor. Initially, the initiative was received favorably by the district staff. We had the visits of two of the staff, two of the apiary specialists from the district of North Vancouver, which approved after a few back and forth exchange the location of the beehive, as shown here by the arrow, which is located just next to a fence between two neighbors. Both neighbors are in this location here. Both neighbors are in very favor of this application, and one of them, which is Marianne Parker on the right of the picture here, she's actually one of the applicants of the grant for the grant. And you can see the zoom in of the hive here in this location, seen from St. James Street. So after and the benefit that we had and the neighborhood has seen is an increased communication and engagement with residents. When we do the maintenance, we go see the hives, children come around, elderly or young people come around, and we show them how the hive functions and operates. As you can see on these pictures, these are just some of the pictures that I happen to have this afternoon to put together this afternoon quickly for this meeting. And the hive is actually, the extent of the pollination goes from Capilano Road all the way to Lynn Valley. So it's an initiative that the entire community receives as the benefits of. The only problem that we have is that a bylaw this year is that the bylaw requires that the hive be at 7.5 meters from the fence of a property. But in this case, our property we consider is the neighborhood and not only one single property. Therefore, we request the variance that to allow us to have the hive where it's located. Sorry, I'm over time. if you allow me to continue, I can.
If you can draw to a close, that'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
just requesting a variance to be granted to us to have the hive where it is located at the moment, so that we have access to the grant and be able to maintain the hive with the cost that it implies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will leave the documents here electronically as well, and that were submitted, including building grant program and a letter from an elderly neighbor that couldn't come. She was very happy to have the hives pollinating all her garden and flowers and having all the produce that she had.
Thank you, Mr. Vahidi. Thank you for your comments.
Mayor Little,
Yes, Councillor?
I was just going to ask if staff could report back to council on this issue. As you may remember, several years ago, we at the district actually had hives on the roof of the municipal hall. And only because we lost our beekeeper who moved to the island did we not continue. It was difficult to find a local beekeeper. So I'm just wondering, under that circumstance, if staff could report back to us in regards to the application's request.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that's been heard by the CAO who's on the call here today. Thank you very much. The next speaker that I have is Sean Salas Lyon, and who I believe is joining us virtually today. And yes. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Okay, let's see. I think I'm sharing my screen. You should see a video here. There we go. So, hello everyone. First of all, I want to say thank you, and sorry in advance. This is my first time talking at one of these places, but I'd like to say thanks. Having recently lived in Montreal, first off, our roads here in the district are impressively maintained. Seriously, you guys are doing a great job with road maintenance, and I want to say thanks. I didn't know how good we had it, so really thank you. Anyway, I'd like to make a quick suggestion for making our traffic intersections safer. I'd like to propose that we, at some point in the future, implement Dutch-style smart intersections so we can reduce wait times and fatalities. Here's a quick 2-minute video on Dutch intersections I have prepared, which demonstrates what's been possible for many decades now, but we have not yet implemented. Right here, if that's all right.
Yes.
Here's an example from a new intersection I cross every day. As you can see, there's a countdown timer for the bicycle light, which is nice. But there are loops in the ground to detect bicycles not just at the light, but also several meters before the light, and the same is done for car traffic. If the controller detects that a cyclist is approaching and the intersection could be clear, then it will make the light red for cars and speed up the countdown timer to let cyclists get through without stopping. It's always so satisfying to watch the timer count down at only a few seconds, just because it detected my bike. In North America, when it's green for everyone in that direction. But in the Netherlands, many signals work independently. So when there's a chance for one direction to go without interfering with another, then they're given that opportunity. In this example, the bicycle light is green in both directions, here and here, because there are no cars detected going straight through, allowing this girl on the bike to turn left without stopping. Yet this time, the far signal is not green, so these cyclists need to stop to allow these cars to go through. On larger intersections, pedestrians may be given a green light to cross partway instead of having to wait until the whole intersection is clear to start walking. If a tram arrives, it will be given priority, and that section of the pedestrian crossing will be red. In North America, almost all crossings are single phase, which prevents the intersection from responding to real-time traffic levels. That simplicity is not only inefficient, but if you're walking or cycling, it can also be really scary, because you have a long distance to travel and cars can cross your path in multiple places. It's for this reason that Dutch traffic signals can let pedestrians and cyclists have their own signal while cars are given a red light. Notice here that cyclists are given a green light to make a left turn while all car traffic is stopped, making this an extremely safe crossing. Pedestrians are also allowed to cross here in the bottom left because they do not cross paths with those left turning cyclists.
Okay, there's a lot more to show, but I'll leave it at that for now. Seriously though, if you've ever had to wait in an empty intersection, I'm sure you'll agree that things could be improved, but I would like to see, if possible, smarter and safer intersections like these be the standard going forward whenever we have to replace, repair, or building new intersections. The technology is here and we can not only save lives, make driving through intersections more pleasant for drivers, cyclists, and pedestrians. Thank you, really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your comments, Sean Salas Lyon. We could probably Make sure that the link from the rest of that video is shared with council so that people can watch the rest of the video on their own time.
Sure.
The next speaker I have is Hazen Colbert, joining us virtually.
Mayor Little, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hazen Colbert, 1111 East 27th. Good evening. I speak tonight with respect to my association with council candidates, possibly being risked to smear them during this election. For some time, I have been dealing with a mental wellness issue, which goes back to me being assaulted in my youth. It will be a lifetime of recovery for me. The matter is in front of the courts outside of BC, and a publication ban limits what I can say. Symptoms of trauma from such assaults can be Googled. For me, a symptom is acting out in writing, usually often by text message and email. I have never showed any other behavior acting out. Mayor Little is aware of some aspects of what I say tonight. As the chair of public input and public hearings, the mayor, on behalf of the District of North Vancouver, holds a duty to accommodate mental wellness matters among residents of the DND. Some time ago, a member of council wanted to be banned from Municipal Hall. Your own legal counsel advised that could not happen. The mayor opens each meeting stating that this is the community's house and then moves to public input. I have not been there in person for 3 years. I speak only virtually. Candidate Peter Teven, who I support, is also aware of some details. I have learned that there are those who intend to smear our good mayor and possibly our good candidate, Mr. Teven, at 3 all candidates meetings this week because Mr. Teven and Mayor Little know me. That is the political climate that is now very regrettably considered acceptable. If people intend to defame me, they might be welcome to do so outside of these chambers and in their own name, where they risk relief in court. But why defame the mayor, candidate and councillor in waiting Teven, or any others? Because they know how to conduct a civil conversation with people experiencing a mental wellness challenge. That occasion is un-Canadian. I yield the remainder of my time to the chair.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Colbert. I think we all have a vested interest in making sure that all members of our community have positive mental health, and it's not easy to share your personal stories in that regard, but just wish you all the health as you continue to work through the challenges that you face.
I appreciate your comments, Mayor Little.
We still have some time, ladies and gentlemen, for public input. Would anybody else like to address the meeting? Welcome, come on up. If you could start with your name and approximate address for the record, that would be appreciated. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Allie. I live at 1562 Bond Street. When I speak about my experience in dealing with some council members and leadership to others in the community, there is a common thread. We do not feel supported, heard, or spoken to appropriately. As our time with this council comes to an end, I'm here to reflect and propose new ideas moving forward and ideally empower more people in the community to take action and vote and be a part of these processes. To start, I'd like to discuss some of the things I, a soon-to-be parent of 2, would like to see in the District of North Vancouver. I'd like to see plans action for denser town centers with an array of diverse housing options that take pressure off of traffic by offering walkable and transit-oriented housing near places people go to access their daily necessities. This will also improve accessibility and consider all people while being a more sustainable option in the current climate crisis. As a parent, I want to leave a better world for my kids, but I also want my kids to be raised in an inclusive community and follow that community's lead in a fight toward more equitable spaces. I want my kids and your kids and you and I to live in a compassionate community with proper civil discourse. I want our council to recognize why diversity helps us all. We want families to feel welcome and like they belong. I have heard exclusionary statements from some members of council, most recently directed toward large concrete towers and promising to work against more of them. It's demoralizing and quite frankly rude for the families and people who are literally living in these homes. The discussions on reevaluating the current exclusionary zoning principles need to continue, no matter how uncomfortable they make some people feel, because that's kind of the point. The way some council members currently operate actively demotivates people from voting, participating, and from speaking up because the culture perpetuated here is exclusive, aggressive, and impenetrable. I want a council that prioritizes diverse voices in neighborhoods and works toward a compassionate community. I know council members here who are deeply in support of these notions and supportive and receptive to feedback when it arises. So I know that this is possible. Council must be a supportive, protected, and friendly environment that people access positively and without fear. My experience with some members of council has been anything but welcoming and supportive, and I truly feel that this is because these members of council are so against these diverse neighborhoods and communities here, filled with people of different backgrounds, socioeconomic levels, and of course, systemically, that in turn creates an unhealthy and unacceptable pattern of behavior with the community's residents as the reasoning behind these ill-informed opinions is one rooted in exclusion and closed-minded thinking. When this toxic culture changes, we become that much closer to a more accepting, inclusive, and compassionate community. We have a duty to our kids and the future families and residents in this community to make this a welcoming place for all. And I'm really hoping that becomes a reality soon.
Thank you very much. Oh, may I just clarify? I caught your address. I did not catch your name.
Allie.
Do you have your last name?
Allie, many.
Thank you so much. It's on the record. We'll double check. Yeah. Okay. We still have a couple more minutes. Just checking virtually. Do we have any virtual hands up at this point? No, I can't take speakers 2 times in the same session, so it would only be first-time speakers. If somebody else would like to speak, yes, you're welcome. And again, if you can start with your name and approximate address for the record would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't intending to speak today. I was here to support Bruno. I live on 430 West Windsor Road. My name is Amarjit Parmar, Amarjit Parmar.
Welcome.
The reason I've been in North Vancouver for about 50 years. I've been here since 72, and in between I had a chance to move to Calgary. So when I come back about 3-4 years ago, after 16 years, I noticed there's a lot of garbage around the streets, along the highway, on certain roads. And it used to be a very clean place in the times before I went to Calgary. And I don't know what's happening. One of the things I noticed is the blue boxes that we have for recycling. People throw in those little wrappers and stuff. And when they come to collect those things, I think some of those escape those boxes. And that may be one of the reasons. The other thing is that along the highway, part of the North Vancouver, I'm concerned about North Shore Highway. There's a lot of garbage when you go from Lonsdale to the cut and down below. And it doesn't look like a North Vancouver district that I used to see years before. And in Calgary, they had blue boxes that are big boxes. You throw in all of that has a lid on, those things don't escape. And plus they have a sort of structured where once a year they clean all the streets around the city. Anyway, just anything you can do to keep the garbage off the streets. If you don't keep it, there will be more garbage because people, when you see garbage, like a broken window syndrome, and they will be throwing more garbage. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Amarjit Parmar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further speakers at this time, and so we're going to move back to the regular order of the agenda. And I will just say, during the normal part of the term, agendas will be much meatier than tonight's agenda. We decided as a council that we were going to try to limit controversial decision-making around the election time and try to address those issues ahead of time or leave them to the next council. We didn't want those decisions spanning multiple governments. And so, yes, we do have an agenda tonight. It is a little bit on the thin side, but we're going to work our way through that program. So at this point, the first item up is item 8.1, which is bylaw 8594, 2020 to 2023 tax exemptions by council, bylaw 8379, 2019 amendment bylaw 8594, 2020. This item is up for adoption, which means council does not have a debate on the matter. And so I'm going to seek a mover for the motion. Moved by Councillor Back. Is there a seconder on the matter? We've got Councillor Bond. Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item 8.2. This is bylaw 8595, Royal Canadian Legion Branch 114, Lynn Valley, permissive tax exemption. This item is also up for adoption, which means no discussion by the council. Will somebody please move the motion? Moved by Councillor Kern. Is there a seconder on the matter?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Bond. Call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. The next item up for discussion, this was added via agenda addenda, and the council likes to avoid adding items by agenda addenda as much as we reasonably can. In this case, this was delayed slightly by the province. The province wanted to review the Dcc Bylaw Amendment. It was released from the province and now it is ready, but it didn't leave us enough time to put it in the advance agenda. Under normal conditions, we just put it on the next regular meeting of council, but since that one is after the election, we felt that I felt that it was appropriate to allow this as an agenda addenda. So item 8.3 is bylaw 8596, Development Cost Charges Dcc Bylaw Amendment. Is there a mover for the item? Moved by Councillor Forbes. Is there a seconder on the item? I've got Councillor Hanson. Okay, and again, this item is up for adoption. The council has already had their discussion on this matter, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving back to the regular order on 8.4, this is bylaw 8553, amendments to the council procedures bylaw. This item again has already been debated by the council and this item is up for consideration for adoption. Will somebody be moving the recommendation? It's moved by Councillor Hanson. Is there a seconder on the matter? Councillor Back. Again, it's up for adoption, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item is the council policy on council reports. This item is, the recommendation is that the council policy entitled council reports is approved. So this is item 8.5 page. Okay, and this item is up for consideration by the council. This is not at an adoption stage, although it would take immediate effect, but council can have discussion on the matter. So is there somebody going to be making a motion? Motion is, you're moving the staff recommendation, Councillor Hanson? Yes, is there a seconder on the matter? By Councillor Bond. Any discussion on the matter? Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I don't have a whole lot to say, except that I think the provisions of this proposed policy are reasonable, provide some structure for those seeking to bring council reports and some parameters for those reports. And I am satisfied with this as a policy and would vote for its approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Bond, any further comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Little. This recommendation for this update to our council report procedure comes from one of the recommendations from the Lucadellis report into the pigeon bylaw. And the one comment I had is that in the policy here, we're trying to make sure that no councillor brings forward something that would be detrimental to the interests of the municipality or unlawful or prohibited by other legislation or regulations. And at this point in this policy, that decision is made by 3 people. It's made by the mayor, the CAO, and the clerk. And I know that in other jurisdictions, even within the Lower Mainland, councillors have procedures like this have been used to silence certain councillors. And so I think as a bit of a safeguard in the way that this policy is written, the minimum that should happen is that if there is a decision to not add a councillor's report to an agenda because of any of these reasons, that report and that decision should be published publicly so that the public has an opportunity and all of council has an opportunity to know what the report was, why it didn't come forward. I'm not sure if there's an opportunity to add some form of redress to that. Should council want to consider that or not the bylaw, but the report brought forward. But I would like to see some openness and transparency into that specific decision-making process in this policy.
I think it's a very important point, Councillor Bond. I don't think that the intent is to use the policy to stifle debate or stifle topics, but so I would completely agree that I think that there needs to be a proper reporting on it. Mr. Stewart, how do you understand the policy in terms of reporting back on an item that is has been unanimously agreed to that it is not that it is detrimental to the district? How do you intend to, if you read this policy the way it is written, how would you report back on that?
Your Worship, the intent of the policy was to go beyond what we had in the past, which was really to allow just the mayor to make that decision. And so I can assure you that the clerk and I would actually probably refer this to all of council for a discussion if there was something that was contentious. If it's clearly illegal, we would probably just inform council we can't proceed with it. But I don't, I don't anticipate that kind of thing. I don't think this is actually all that controversial. I think it's an improvement to our procedural bylaw, and I can assure council that if there was something where the three of us, the clerk, the mayor, and the CEO, said, "Man, this is something that we really need to have a full council discussion on," we would do that.
Yeah, I think while the power has rested in the mayor's office to move things around on the agenda, I've been pretty cautious to use that. In the last 4 years, I think there's only been 2 reports that I've delayed in any time frame. I believe Councillor Bond, you had a report on the rental and affordable housing task force. We had simultaneously a staff report coming up, and so I did delay yours. So the staff one came first, and I think we had a similar situation with the rodenticide regulations that were spearheaded by Councillor Curran. There was commentary coming from the staff as well. So I used it as sparingly as I could, but I do recognize that you do need better regulation on this, because you may have somebody who comes into this position and decides that that it's not just a power they have, but that it's a responsibility they have to try to proactively manage what is discussed. And so I'm supportive of the policy. I kind of like to see how it is used the first times and leave it to the council of the day to decide how they want to respond to it. But I completely agree with your point that you can't use this to stifle debate, stop people from having their discussions, that every member of this council has a mandate in the community to discuss the issues that they feel are important. And I would hate to see this kind of policy limit that. But I don't know, does Mr. Stewart's reading of the matter, does that satisfy you, Councillor?
Well,
Yeah, if I could add, Your Worship, I really, we try to work with council, we try to work with the mayor's office, and I think this policy represents a really good balance. And I just can assure you, as long as I'm the CIO, that if there's something that's going to be controversial, I would rather have a ruling by all of council rather than just the 3 of us. But this serves as a really a good interim kind of review of what's being proposed, and the limitations that we've identified in the policy are that they're very, very limited. They're just saying if it's illegal, we can't advance it for all intents and purposes.
Councillor Bond.
Yeah, I just think in the spirit of the report that this recommendation comes from in being more open around these types of decisions, how things get on the council agenda and how the decisions are made, that if such a decision is going to be made about excluding a councillor's report from the agenda, that decision should be made public and the reasons for that should be made public. And whether that's published at the start of the meeting as similar to the release of closed meeting decisions, or whether it is brought forward to council in a public meeting to discuss those reasons. I think that should be clear in the policy because we have the opportunity now with this council to set this policy. And the next council, hopefully everything, hopefully the next council is, as you say, Mayor, uses this policy with good interest, but we are the ones that are setting the policy now. So I'd like to see at least those provisions in there, because we're setting policy not for the best case where everything works properly. We're setting it for a case where it might not necessarily be functioning in a good way with good interests at heart. So I would like to see those kind of provisions incorporated.
So to be clear, you are the seconder of the motion.
I am. Yeah, I seconded it for discussion. So
are you proposing an alternate motion or an amendment to the motion, or do you think that the next council should perhaps workshop this?
Well, I think my proposal is fairly clear. Just whenever such a decision is made, that report and the reasons for that decision are made public.
Okay. I have a couple of other speakers lined up. Are you okay with me going on? I have Councillor Kern, followed by Councillor Hanson. Councillor Kern, your comments?
Perhaps I go first because I can just say I view that as a friendly amendment.
We don't have an amendment yet, but
I would view that as a friendly.
Let's go to Councillor Kern first, get Councillor Kern's comments, and then we can discuss how you want to address that. Councillor Kern, your comments.
Yeah, I mean, I support those amendments as well. I think that's important. As Councillor Bond pointed out, this was the way this came onto the agenda as a result of this investigation into the council procedures and was a recommendation from that report. And I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about while the process, this is about the process for council reports, I also think it's important that we consider a lot more than the way in which council reports are approved. That's obviously important. That's why we're having this conversation, but it's also about the conditions that enable the community, staff, and council to be free of threats and harassment when they bring forward reports, and indeed at all times. And I just wanted to share that this has not been my experience. And I believe that we would all agree that members of the public and members of staff and members of council should never be subjected to threats or harassment, and that attempts to quell community engagement can have a chilling effect on democracy, which is, of course, the goal to maintain the status quo and to silence dissent. So I feel like I hope that this council will support calls for an independent provincial municipal ethics commissioner. Perhaps if there's a controversial report or something that someone would have a way to seek some support for that, it would enable local elected representatives the opportunity to address abuses of power or other concerns that happen while they're in office. And I also hope that the next council will make it a priority to direct staff to provide recommendations on ways to ensure that we can have a safe and healthy municipal hall. Because again, that has not been the experience of many people, and it has not been my experience. And I believe that we can and must do better. So I look forward to seeing an amendment on this piece, and will likely support it with the caveat that this is just like one small step and that we have a lot of work to do. I think that it's not reasonable to suggest that that one person's well-being should be put over someone else's, and I think that we can create conditions where everyone feels safe here. And as I said, that was not my experience.
Okay. Councillor Hanson, did you have other comments at this time, or you were making a recommendation, expressing your willingness to amend the motion?
Yeah, and I suppose as a lawyer, when I look at this, the missing element, and Councillor Bond has correctly identified it as any kind of appeal provision. there's three people make a judgment. And that could, in some circumstance, not of course with the staff that we currently have, but in some circumstance, be made in bad faith. And as written, there's no recourse. So it would seem to me that the reasonable recourse there would be for this to be put before the entire council to rule upon whether the proposed motion is unlawful, contrary to the district's interest, prohibited by provincial legislation or regulations. And then if the councillor in question didn't like the judgment of the entire council on that, then your option would be judicial review for an error on the face of the record. So that would be my proposal, would be that there be perhaps a one sentence addition to say that there's always the right to ask the entire council to rule on those elements. Thank you.
I think I understand the provision there that you would, that the three have the ability to stop it, but that decision has to be ratified by the council at an in-camera session of the council, because they're going to have to receive.
You could seek that right.
The problem is they maybe need to receive legal advice or share legal advice to be able to make the decision. So I would say that it would then return to an in-camera meeting for a majority of council to decide to ratify the decision of the executive group. So if I may just comment wise on this, I support this. I think that this is a reasonable limit on the power of the mayor, and that, you know, I definitely think we should be pursuing this kind of a review, because having a mayor that can continually punt items of import to the members of the council, I don't think is desirable. I don't think that's good. That's actually not fair. However, having said that, you know, when I look at the situation that created the need for the Luke Ellis report, I have to tell you, this wasn't at play. It's well within Luke Ellis's role to vary and go over all of our council report areas. It doesn't have to specifically always tie back to what led into us getting the Luke Ellis report, but there was no protest from senior staff on that motion. There was no, and so I just don't know that that specific instance would have resulted in a different result had this policy been in place. It may still be an absolutely good and reasonable recommendation. I think it is a good and reasonable recommendation. I just don't think that it was born out of that instance. So I'm happy to go either way here. Either we pass it as is and refer to the next council to put the mechanism in place for a review, or if you want to wordsmith on the spot here right now and somebody wants to formally propose an amendment to it, and it's along that line that it gets referred back to an in-camera meeting of council for a majority of council to decide to support it, I'd be happy to support that amendment as well. Is that Councillor Bond, you raised the issue. Is that your desire to create that amendment at this moment?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay. Just checking with the clerk. Do you understand the nature of the addition?
Yes, Your Worship, I think I do. I have some suggested wording, if I may, for conversation purposes.
That would be appreciated.
First of all, though, I would like to address the issue about returning it automatically to a closed meeting. I'd remind council we're constrained by Section 90 of the Charter as to what is suitable to go into a closed meeting. So I think each issue will have to be ascertained on its merits.
Okay.
So hence my wording is a sentence that we will work into the existing wording of the policy somewhere, whether it's at the end or more appropriate spot. We'll look. Correct me, Councillor Bond, if I'm off the mark here, that the reasons for any rejection of a council report be reported to a council meeting for council's consideration.
And so just leave it to the content to determine if that occurs in camera or in public.
Yeah, that's right. Your Worship, we'd potentially run into a conflict if it was not eligible for a closed meeting. So I can read that once more quite quickly. That the reasons for any rejection of a council report be reported to a council meeting for council's consideration. Kind of clunky, but.
Yeah, it just doesn't address, if it goes to a closed meeting and then council continues to say this is not a good thing, like the reasons still need to be released publicly. with the
Initially, I had the
report, right?
word in be reported to a public meeting, but then that sort of binds us in the opposite direction. But
Yeah, your worship, I have to interject here.
Okay,
This is
Mr.
not the kind of thing, this is not the kind of thing you do on the fly. I understand the comments that Councillor Bond has, and he's concerned that if the three of us, for example, in the report, still end up with a situation that council wants to advance. So I would just suggest we defer this. Quite honestly, there's no emergency, no immediacy to this. And I would really rather get it right than make it controversial. So I would strongly recommend that we just defer this. We'll deal with it with the new council. We'll take into consideration Councillor Bond's comments, and we'll, I'm sure, come up with something that will meet the tests of the lawyers and all the rest of it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. We do have a motion that is moved and seconded on the floor. We have to follow the process at this point. Councillor Bond, are you satisfied with the clerk's wording that he suggested?
Well,
or do you want to refer this matter back to a workshop for the next council to address?
I would just suggest to include the wording that if the mayor, CEO, and municipal clerk determine that an agenda item is not to be included on the agenda, that the reasons for that decision and the proposed agenda item be released to the public. That's all that I'm going to suggest as an amendment.
Your worship, if we decide that it's contrary to the municipal interests and have a legal opinion that says that it ought not to be dealt with, that wording by Councillor Bond is really problematic, because it can't be a matter that we can release to the general public. So I just, we're getting into an area here, and I appreciate the politics and the interests and all the rest of it. We changed the policy so that it wasn't just the mayor, you know, so that the clerk and I could wade in if we have to. But if council has a concern about how the process works, I really strongly suggest we not try to draft language around legal process. We refer it back to staff, and we'll come back to council, and we'll talk about what we can or can't do. I cannot more strongly recommend that that's how you should be doing things, not determining legal process on the fly at a council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. I think it is a fair point that the content is still going to determine whether it can or can't be released, particularly if it has a legal opinion attached. But I get your point. And so the question tonight is, are you satisfied with the wording that's been proposed, or would you prefer to table the matter and send the matter back to a future meeting of the next council to have a more in-depth discussion about the mechanics of how it will work?
Yeah, I won't be supporting it as proposed. So if council wants to defer it, then I.
Okay, so we don't have an amendment on the floor. Then at this point, we have the original motion on the floor. Will somebody be like, we can carry on the conversation. I'm completely comfortable with that. Or if somebody moves a motion to defer the matter, then we'd have to have a debate on the motion to defer.
I move the motion to defer, given that I brought the original motion.
Yes, you can. Motion to
In
defer.
view
is-
of Councillor Braun's comments and the discussion that followed, I move the motion to defer.
And just to be clear.
I can't hear.
Sorry, just clarifying that on deferral versus referral, I always get confused about the two.
No
One of them
discussion.
means there's no more debate on the item, so I just want to clarify with the clerk. It's referred to back to staff, so that would be end debate. Okay. So that is Councillor Hanson's motion is then
I'll second
seconded
it.
by Councillor Bond. And so there's no debate at this point. I'm going to call the question on that motion. The motion is to refer the matter back to staff for future discussion. And I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Matter passes unanimously. Thank you very much. It's a very important discussion that we need to have, and how a piece of legislation becomes law is so critically important. It's a foundational component of government, and so I'm glad we're going to have the discussion, or the next council is going to have the discussion at this point. Okay, council. So Councillor Kern, your hand is still up from before. I think that might be Councillor Kern. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, the next item, again, I'm going to refer you back in the package to the, my pages might be misnumbered here at this point. 8.6? Which one's 8.6? Oh, okay. Thank you very much. So at this point, the next item on discussion is business license for Glow and Grow Children's Center, 705 Blythewood Drive.
So
That
moved.
Item is 8.6. It is moved by Councillor Murray. Is there a seconder on the matter? Moved second by Councillor Back. Discussion, Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. It was a really good turnout of support for Glow and Grow Children's Center. And I think I was particularly appreciative of the program for the daycare. You know, the applicant gave a very succinct description of the work that she does with the children that are part of her program, and just the amount of time spent outdoors that they highlighted was, you know, something that's so important. And I wish there was something around when my kids were little that was as complete as her program. So I'm happy to support it. And that is all.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Councillor Back, your comments.
Not too much to add, Your Worship. I was actually away that evening of the public meeting, but I did review the video and of course read the minutes from that meeting. It's clear that there's broad support for increasing the number of spaces here at this daycare. And I think the programming along with the location really works well for the community and the neighborhood. So pleased to support it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Councillor Curran.
I'm also happy to support this, and I just was reflecting on that there must be a simpler process. Like, I don't feel there's such a need for childcare in our community, and it seemed like a very cumbersome process for the applicant to go through. That seemed unnecessary, and I'd like to see these types of decisions be made by staff in the future if the place is suitable. If the children's health and well-being is prioritized, I think that's enough, and these decisions should be expedited.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bond, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. Similar to Councillor Curran's comments, I think there is a role for staff to play here in expediting decisions such as these. You know, the story from both the childcare operator and all the families and parents that came out to support a great program that is obviously needed in this community. We're asking a lot of providers and parents to go through, you know, having a public meeting, coming to an open house before the meeting, coming to a public meeting at council, bringing parents who are already struggling with childcare out at 7 o'clock at night to kind of pour their hearts out about how challenging it is to find childcare in the district. All in the process to approve 8 extra childcare spaces when we need over 2,000 childcare spaces in the next 8 years. So I think there's definitely a simpler process here. I think it's a lot to ask for parents and daycare providers to go through that whole process of coming out and showing support for something we know we desperately need in the municipality. And so I think there's definitely a role for staff to play on simpler applications like this one that came before us. The program, again, as Councillor Murray said, the program sounds amazing. It sounds exactly like the preschool that my children went to and I participated in, the Lynn Valley Parent Participation Preschool. Beautiful outdoor setting, you know, natural play. And I think things like this are things that we should be helping people along and making the process easier for parents to find childcare and the great people that are providing that care to do so in an easier way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I I'm thinking over the childcare applications that we've had in the district over the last while. I can't think of one that wasn't eventually approved. However, I can think of several where there were issues that were raised in the process that we as a municipality needed to respond to. In some cases, it was suitable parking within the block, management of the flow of vehicles coming back and forth. In this case, I think that this one has ample support in the public space around for this expansion of the property, and I'm happy to support this application. But thinking back about it, I can think of a few instances where we all expressed concerns and had wanted the feedback of the staff to be able to address issues of parking and loading of the area. So while I want to streamline the process, I don't know that I want to entirely do away with it. And so I'd look to staff for advice on how we can do that. Maybe we need to talk about in order to be able to not be using necessarily the council table time for some of those discussions, maybe there's a way we could set up a subcommittee and the subcommittee could hear applications and really have a focus that they're going to do that, and that maybe it's not as intimidating a setting. I understand some people are very intimidated by coming out to a council meeting and talking. In this case, I think it was a very affirmational process. The people that came out wanted to come out to say their appreciation and support it, and so I think it took on a life of its own and ended up being a very positive thing. Had they not done it, maybe they wouldn't have had the same impression of support that they end up with. So, but I definitely see the argument for streamlining the process to make sure that it's not onerous. But I just don't know that I'm ready to do away with it entirely. At this point, I see councillors trying to figure out, with this new system, it's not clear as to who's a first-time speaker, second-time speaker. I believe it's Councillor Hanson next, followed by Councillor Bond, if your hand is still up. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'll be brief. I'm very happy to support the childcare proposal. And I also do believe it would be prudent for the next council to identify a number of areas, and it isn't just childcare, where there's very broad consensus in the community, where the need is urgent, and where perhaps council time could be spent, better spent on other priorities, such that these matters are moved along. So, but that will be a task of the next council and a matter of policy. Thank you.
Child Care Review Committee or something that can make it easier for people. That's fair. Any other members of council wishing to address the matter? Councillor Murray, I see your hand.
Well, just on the heels of the comments by Councillor Hanson, I do think there are some areas that staff will need to report back to the new council. Things like minor variances, such as the beekeeper application this evening, childcare applications that have, no opposition, and certainly small building permits need to be streamlined. Obviously we've got some backups given, the number of vacancies that have been seen all throughout the region with trying to, get employees. So there is a challenge in that regard, but certainly we could look at a multi-stream process to, advanced, minor building permit applications that are quite simple and straightforward, as opposed to letting them sit in the queue with the big applications. Doesn't seem to be very prudent. So I think the new council will, given this very unique place that we find ourselves in time after a pandemic and with supply chain issues as challenges as they are, some ways to become much more efficient.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. I see no further speakers at this time, so I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Council. Oh, Councillor Forbes, I'm sorry. Oh, okay. No, you're welcome. If you want to speak, we have had the vote, but if you want to add your comments to the vote.
I fully support this application, and it was so well received that night that it was almost like everybody wanted to have a party when it was all over. Everybody was so happy. I do agree with you partially, because I think also you get into, the new council can set up the structure for this, but I just want to make sure, because some of the applications, like you said, parking, traffic at certain times of the day, things like that can be an issue in that community. that is right there. So as long as there's still a way for the citizens that will be around that particular application of a daycare, I'm talking about daycare specifically, still have a way that if they want to, they can make their comments to whether it's a subcommittee or somewhere else. But I agree with all of the comments about streamlining the process.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Yes, we have almost done everything as a committee of the whole. And many other municipalities, particularly larger municipalities than us, quite often use subcommittees to make decisions of a minor nature away from the council table. So that's up for discussion for the next council. Okay, council, moving on to item 8.7. This was again through an addenda. And a request was made to my office for a grant, and my office can only grant $1,000. And the nature of it at the time, the request was that it was in part to respond to the extraordinary circumstance that the Seymour Salmonid Society ended up in because of that landslide that completely disrupted their operations. And so this is an effort to make them whole in partnership with others. And so it's up for discussion. Moved by Councillor Murray. I'm happy to second the matter. Is there any other, Councillor Murray, your comments?
Well, no, I would just say that, disruption of their activities during that landslide were, absolutely significant. I will report as well that we have, there have been salmon that have made it past the slide. So there's a party happening with the stream keepers in regards to that river. And, just to remind people, the stream keepers were actually walking down the stairs at the end of Riverside and putting the fish in, basically bags, and then climbing back up the stairs and carting them up past the rock slide. That, it took, weeks and months for that slide to be dislodged. And really for the flow to return to somewhat normal, over a couple of years. So it was a significant amount of work that our volunteers contributed to that natural event. And I just want to thank all of them for all of the work that they do. And this will be able to, get them back to where they were prior to that slide. So I absolutely support it.
Yeah, thank you for your comments, Councillor Murray. You think about the situation, had it occurred naturally, the river itself probably would have lost its fish stocks, and it would have taken generations for it to naturally return back into that space. But because of the work of some really diligent volunteers who understand that space very well, they were able to restore that area as a fish habitat and make it work again. And I'm absolutely impressed by that. So my hat is off to the volunteers in that space. Councillor Bond.
Just to echo your comments and Councillor Murray comments as well. The Salmon Society has done extraordinary work. I think the landslide was actually one of the first things that Councillor Hansen and I, when we were elected in 2014, actually had to deal with on council. And that, so it's been almost 8 years. So a very long time and a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, and the work that the volunteers with the society have done across all jurisdictions with so many different partners has really been outstanding. So this is, a small grant of $10,000 to make them whole at the end is, I think, the least that we can do as council for to show our appreciation for the hard work that they've done.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Bond. Councillor Back.
Just a brief comment to, again, echo what's been said before me, but to pass on my thanks to all the volunteers. It's hard to get people to volunteer for anything these days, as we've talked about with some of our own committees and whatnot. And the fact that this organization relies on over 800 volunteers, it's really impressive. So this is I think a small amount of funds to really to help them out at a time when they need it. So I'm happy to support it.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Back. I see no further speakers at this time. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. Okay, council, we have completed the business of the evening's agenda. We do have an opportunity for reports. And so just checking, Mr. Stewart, do you have any reports for the meeting this evening?
No, Your Worship, I would just wish all council members who are running for office good luck. I have a little more personal experience in this, and I understand how much work you put into that, and I hope our community understands all the effort that you make, not only on an ongoing basis, but also during the election. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Just my own report, and I know a number of members of council attended the pilgrimage walk from the St. Paul's Residential School back to the TWN Administrative Building on to recognize Truth and Reconciliation Day this last Friday. It was incredible to talk to people and hear the experiences as we walked the 8.5 kilometers, and it's such an appropriate symbolic observation because you have to come to the realization that kids had to walk that 8.5 kilometers knowing full well they were going to be mistreated when they got to their destination and what they had to go through to get to school under those conditions. It's incredibly remarkable. And to hear the resilience from the people that we had a chance to chat with, a number of the elders who had close family members that had been through that residential school system, and the impacts that still occur intergenerationally within the Tsleil-Waututh Nation specifically, and also the Squamish Nation and all First Nations that dealt with that. It's still traumatizing and affecting people intergenerationally today. But I was able to walk the whole space, and I saw a number of members of council. So when you have your reports, if you want to add your comments to it, please do. Councillor Curran, your comments?
Just echoing the day and just encouraging the community to, and obviously staff and council, to continue on the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action that this council has adopted, and the importance of moving beyond symbolic acts like wearing orange shirts to supporting Indigenous sovereignty. And then just recognizing that tomorrow is the National Day of Action for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, Two-Spirit, LGBTQ+ people. And that's another important day that the district has also should be taking action on the calls for justice as we move forward. There has been much less action on that, on the calls for justice, and we all have a role to play in moving that work forward.
Thank you for your report, Councillor Curran. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I regret that due to pressures of my schedule, I wasn't able to attend the walk, but I was able to attend along with Councillor Forbes, who attended, I believe, as acting mayor, a ceremony to honor residential school survivors at the Strength and Remembrance pole that afternoon near the RCMP office in North Vancouver. And it was a very touching ceremony, and one of reflection and well, reflection really of the circumstances. So thank you everyone who organized that and put that event on as well. It lasted about an hour and a half.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, your report.
Thank you, Mayor Little. My daughter Sydney and I were able to attend the pilgrimage. We were down by Rona with, there was a very, great turnout along the roadside. You could tell that people were sort of moving from section to section. And they had closed the road, and we could see you up on the overpass at the bottom of the 3rd Street Hill. And as the procession came down the hill, they were guided over to the southern lane. And, we were all sort of on the Rona side, on the northern part of the road, and the road was open. So, I started to ask people to come out into the center because of the wall of support, and we did that. I don't think the police liked that, but we were able to go out a little bit closer, and I hope next year it'll be a little bit more intimate in the sense of, trying to create that wall of protection, because I think people felt it was important to get closer to the group that was walking down, the members of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation and guests. And it was, I'm glad I was able to take part, and I was able to show my support. I would also like to, as the director and the representative for the district on the Metro board, just update council and the community in regards to the smoke that we've experienced over the last day or so in regards to the Minnetonka fire that's happening out in Coquitlam right now. It is over a 12-hectare area, and crews have been able to contain it, although it's still spotty, and the park is closed. Metro has asked that people stay away. It's in a very challenging steep terrain to be able to fight, and it really highlights the concern, I think, that Mayor Little has spoken about in the past of wildfires on the North Shore, and what kind of support we're going to need if we ever, hopefully we never find ourselves in this situation. But it has been a very challenging fire to fight, and the crews have, the access is very difficult. So they're keeping the crews safe, and they've got 5 helicopters today that we're currently dropping water on the fire, and it looks like it's contained or slowed. It's slowed, but not completely contained. But I will update through the updates that come from CAO Dubrovoni, and I will forward them to council as they come in.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I see no further hands for reports to be made. Okay, Council, we've completed the business of this evening's meeting. If somebody will move adjournment.
Move adjournment.
Moved by Councillor Murray, accepted. Thank you all very much. Good luck in the campaigns over the next little bit. I would just like to say that we do have advanced polls occurring in the community on October 5th, 7th, 8th, 5, 8, and 10. And so on the 5th, it is here at the District of North Vancouver Hall. On the 8th and 10th, and the 10th being Thanksgiving Monday, those are occurring at both Parkgate Rec Center and here at District Hall, again, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then after that point, it's to general voting day on October 15th. And I would also encourage people, there are a number of all candidates meeting taking place in this community this week. Tuesday in Seymour at 7 o'clock at Mount Seymour United Church, Wednesday in Lynn Valley at the Lynn Valley Rec Center at 7 o'clock, and on Friday in Edgemont at Highlands United Church, also at 7 o'clock. And so avail yourself of those opportunities to get to know the candidates, because the election is coming in the next couple of weeks. So again, thank you all so much. Have yourselves a fantastic week.